Welcome back, Lemonsterites. I'm your state representative, Natalie Higgins, and this is our December episode of Representing Leominster. And I just want to thank all of you who came out late last month, or beginning of this month, December 1st, for our Cookies and Cocoa event. It was our third annual event, and we gathered over 400 books to give out as holiday gifts to local students and little ones. So thank you so much for coming. We've already got a save the date, so the Sunday after Thanksgiving next year, we hope to see you. And I'm so excited to have our district attorney, Joe Early, on my show. I can't believe it's been 3 years and we haven't had you on the show, district attorney.
Well, it's nice to be here, Natalie. You know, good. Yeah, well, it's great to be here.
Time flies.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It seems like we just running for election 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that a year's already passed.
So, Representing Leominster, we usually start when we bring on especially elected officials with kind of a little background, get to know you for folks who maybe don't know you really well, kind of what inspired you to run and what has it been like being our district attorney for Worcester County?
What inspired me to run really was my dad. I had a very successful law practice, making a good amount of money, and but I looked at all the things that he had done. And he, in Congress, he had gotten 1,600 pieces of legislation passed. And he said to me one day, guess how many of these pieces I had my name on? I said, I don't know, half. He was trying to make a point with me. I said, nope. I said, a third, nope. Quarter? And he said, no. I said, Dad, why don't you tell me? He had his name on one bill, and all 1,600 got passed. He said, when you don't care who gets the credit, you can do anything. He also told me that, helping people through the same things that you do, and you do very well. Get housing, get jobs, get food, things like that. Make sure their benefits, the elderly, make sure they're being taken care of. These were the things he loved doing. It was the best part of the job. So looking at all of that, and I think we're down here for a reason. I really do think we're down here for each other. No matter how tumultuous the times, I think we're down here to help. And he said, Joey, I said, Dad, I think I want to run for office. And I ran for the state senate, and I got beat. And he had a stroke the same day. And it was just a crazy day. But it set it up for 6 years later to run for DA. And I learned a lot from the mistakes that I had made. And he said, why do you want to do this? And I said, you talk about helping people. You talk about one of the other congressmen, he told me that he was responsible for an extra $500 million every year to the National Institutes of Health. He said we spend 95% of every dollar on treatment, 5% on prevention. Prevention's always underutilized and underfunded, but I said, I think I can do the same thing with crime. Yeah. I think we can prevent crime if we get to kids early enough while their brain's developing, change and modify behaviors. So he said, I think you're crazy, but I said, I don't want to be 70 years old and say, why didn't I do something to help make it better? And that was my inspiration. It was my dad.
Yeah, no, and that's such a great story, and what great advice to have from him. Can you talk a little bit about the programming, that prevention programming that your office does? Because I think folks don't really realize the role that you play in our schools. Okay.
We have a community outreach group, and Ellen Miller, Liz Haddad, Jill Wilbur, Abby Westerland, they come in and present a bunch of programs to get kids to change modified behaviors, get kids to think. And our number one most requested program, we've been out in the Leominster area, Fitchburg area quite a bit, is our bullying program, bullying and internet safety. Just getting kids to realize that those words you type out on a phone can, you've seen the testimony down in Boston, can have such a hard, long-lasting effect. You miss that with the phone. You miss the give and take of a conversation. And we've had, they talk about the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. They talk about bullying. They talk about domestic violence. They talk about safe dating. They talk about controlling behaviors. If you're receiving 200-300 text messages a day from a boyfriend, it's not normal. And we've got a really good program now. As we're in really the biggest social crisis of our time, the opioid crisis, and thank you for your hard work on that down in Boston. We've got a great evidence-based program that's called This Is Not About Drugs. And we have the kids take a test, usually 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, sometimes 9th, and then watch a 15, 20-minute video about 3 kids who got addicted when they were 12, 14, and 15 years old. Then we have them take the test again. And what this does is it gives them information about opioids, the morphine molecule, and it allows them to make responsible, smarter, intelligent decisions. And we're giving them the tools for that. So those are some of our programs. But they can call they can call to the office anytime. Anyone who wants to get on, have us come visit your schools, and we can do that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the programs that you run, and especially just with that opioid one, the evidence-based, so you can see kind of where are these students starting with this one set of videos, where are they ending up with their knowledge, and that it needs to be continuous, right?
Right.
And so I'm so thankful this is my second term on the Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery Committee, but we're just scratching the edge of the opioid crisis, and I want to thank you for all of the work that you're doing around this, because
well, thank you for what you do, and you're a member of our opioid task force, and one of the exciting things that's coming out real soon is we take money, and Leominster PD does a great job arresting drug dealers, drug traffickers. You really do. I'm not just blowing smoke. You really do a great job up here. We're going to take that money, and I'm really excited about this. As you know, Natalie, in the opioid crisis, people operate in silos, and when you step out of those silos, you do better. We're looking at a program they used in Plymouth. Now, last year, our opioid deaths went up 26%.
Right.
Plymouth went down 26%. So I called my good friend Tim Cruz down there, the DA in Plymouth, said, how did it work? And we got to talking. And we're going to follow the model that they've been using, and it's going to be used in several other parts of the state. There's a company called SIMS, Critical Incident Management Systems.
Okay.
They're going to track every overdose, fatal and non-fatal, through the police departments, the hospital, and the jail. And within 20 to 48 hours, everyone who's had a non-fatal overdose will get a knock on the door by a recovery coach and a plainclothes police officer. So say, for example, we had 20 overdoses in the month of December in Worcester. 60 to 70% of those people will be from Worcester. The other 35, 40% might be from Leominster, Fitchburg, Auburn, Shrewsbury. So they're going to be able to call the other police department and say, hey, we got one for you. Hopefully the hospitals will be telling us, and they've done this with, you know how it is dealing with hospitals, but HIPAA doesn't apply to law enforcement. And Ernie Martineau's doing a great job in Fitchburg on this too. He just took over the Central Mass Police Chief's job. We'll be able to tell the other police departments, hey, this happened. The hospital will tell us if someone leaves without taking services, needs attention. 2 words, needs attention. They'll get a knock on the door. I'm real excited about this. I'm real excited about this. And thank you for all the money you've given us to start a pilot program in Leominster. We're already doing it in Leominster, but now this will help make us even better. Someone gets arrested for opioid use. Before they get arraigned, we'll divert them if they'll accept treatment. And we couldn't do it without the money that you get us, Rep, so thank you.
Right, and I'm so thankful to be a part of a community like Leominster that is open to trying new things and figuring out how do we get ahead of this. And your team works with Janessa McQuaid in the police department, who's our civilian in the police department who works on the opioid crisis and also works to address homelessness in our community. And she is doing amazing work, and we're trying to support her as much as we can so she doesn't burn out, because she's doing, she's taking on a lot, right? And all of our first responders are taking on a lot more trauma dealing with the opioid crisis and losing loved ones and neighbors and kids and parents. And it's just touching so across every community, across every demographic, and to figure out how to deal with this trauma, we've got to approach it from all sides.
Right, and you know, one of the biggest problems, as you know, is the stigma. People think that this is a moral failing or a character flaw. And the smartest medical people in the world have told us this is a very complex disease of the brain.
Right.
And former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said, when we start treating this like the disease that it is, it'll open the doors to treatment. It'll encourage people. But the stigmatization that this is a moral failing or a character flaw is so pervasive. But I think we're getting better. Yeah. It just keeps people from treatment. Parents think, oh my God, what if the neighbors find out? And it shouldn't be that. It should be, oh my God, how do I keep my child alive?
Right, and we just had a town hall yesterday for an hour with our students about mental health and talking about the need to reduce the stigma around mental health and treatment.
Right.
And right, we were like, we got to do addiction and mental health at the same time so that folks can really get to the root of what's going on and how to find the right coping mechanisms.
You're 100% on that. I did mental health law for 17 years. And, you know, you can analogize depression or anxiety to a physical ailment, like a sprained wrist or a broken arm. It's just that something in the brain has the same problem, and it's an illness. It doesn't. The stigmatization there is horrible.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, for someone who has like youth diabetes. Like
Yeah.
we don't say, oh, your body can't produce
Yeah.
the insulin, somehow something's wrong. Like,
Yeah.
your body just can't produce the insulin. We give them the treatment for that, and we make
Right.
sure that they have what they need so they can live a fulfilling, thriving life. And we got to figure out how to help our kids, especially when so many of those diagnoses can happen before they're 24, when it's happening in high school. Also equipping them, and I think you do a great job, and your community outreach does a great job of giving our students the tools to support each other and to
Yeah.
help kind of kick it up to a trusted adult when it's
Right.
above what they can handle.
Yes, and on that, if someone's got a general anxiety disorder or depression, people who don't know much about mental health will say, well, what are they? Why aren't they happy? And it's so much more than that. Maybe they're hearing voices, but a visit or two to the doctor and that stigmatization. I heard Michael Phelps talk about it. That psychiatrists saved his life. And I'm always shocked at the amount of people who do hurt themselves that are suffering from depression. If you're suffering depression, you've got to ask for help. There's no shame or harm in asking for help. And to what you said there about the local programs, it's kind of funny. We gave money to the Leominster High School for a variety of sports, most recently for the girls' cheerleaders. And I said to one of the cheerleaders, I go, what do you need money for uniforms for? They look pretty good. She lifted up her arm. There was a big hole under the arm and a hole in the wrist. And I said, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
I shut up. But Principal Dobzinski does a great job over there.
The whole team at the entire Leominster public school system, but they've been doing so much with so little for so long, and that's why, I'm so thrilled that we finally passed a real plan for funding and fixing the funding formula. But there's so much legislation, so much important legislation that we're taking up, and you've been a real champion when it comes to the hands-free driving legislation that finally got over the finish line, and I'm really excited for that to roll out. Could you talk a little bit about why you were such an advocate for this?
Right. Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough for doing that. I really can't. If you drive down any street in Leominster, Worcester County, you're going to see this. You're going to see this. And driving is such a hard thing to begin with, and you've got to be able to react in the blink of an eye. Now, the hardest part of our jobs, bar none, is talking to people in pain. And we've had several incidences now, several accidents where people have gotten killed texting and walking, or texting and driving. And that technology is made to be addictive. And these tragedies, talking to these families, it's so painful. It has to stop. And your bill will allow the police to write warning tickets for the first 30 days. But we're starting a big campaign soon, too, to put down the phone. Keep your eyes up. We're coming on some taglines and different things like that. But the psychiatrists tell us it'll only work with enforcement as well. But we shouldn't have to see these tragedies,
No.
And kids, there's three types of distraction: visual, what you're looking at, manual, when you're doing something with your hands, and cognitive, when you're doing it with your brain. When you text and drive, you're distracted by all three.
Right.
And the hands-free bill makes it, I don't care what anyone says, it makes it better. If you tap the phone, if you're on Siri, whatever, talking while you're driving, it's not optimal, but it's better than this. And we've got to stop. We've got to stop. We're just seeing too many deaths on the highway. And I say to the kids, we do a great texting and driving presentation. Raise your hand if you got younger brothers or sisters. Raise your hand if you got older brothers or sisters. Keep your hands up. Would you want someone driving on the opposite side of the road, texting and driving, while your mother, your brothers and sisters are coming in the opposite direction? To a person, it's no. But it's just, thank you for that. That is going to save lives. That legislation literally will save lives. That's just good government.
Right, and so much of what we do is setting our values into the law and making sure that that it's too easy for us to kind of make excuses and say it's not a big deal that I'm texting. I just need to check this one thing. And so when we passed it in the House months ago, I went out and ordered my little docking thing for my phone so that I had the hands free, and so now when I get in the car, that's where it goes. It sits there. It's I can't. It's stuck there.
Good for you.
But it's a habit change, right? Because we're used to having it, and admittedly, I'm aware of how distracted I am just from being on the phone. A lot of the calls that Isabel and I take are sitting in Boston traffic when we're commuting in and out of the State House, but just that, never mind the texting, right? Like that, that's a level of distraction.
It is. Especially you get someone who said, all right, we got a mental health issue, we got a crisis. All of a sudden your attention's drawn to that. I'm always wondering, if I hear the phone vibrate, do we have a shooting? Do we have a murder? Do we have a fire? Do we have an accident? Is it my wife? Is it the kids? You know, it's all these different things, but you've got to just rely enough on the phone. I've got technology in the car will actually tell me. I can just tap the screen, it'll tell me the message, it'll read me the message, which is much better than it used to be. But really, I can't overemphasize it enough. It's such a problem. We've had videos of people getting hit in crosswalks by people texting and driving. People in crosswalks, you know, who don't look up and texting and walking who get hit and killed. I mean, these are real tragedies. And like we say all the time in the DA's office, life can change in the blink of an eye. And it does.
So what else is your office working on? It's the holiday season. I'm sure you also have some fun things that you're working on in addition to the routine work.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. We've got the new team award, where we're recognizing someone in the community. Because you know what, our law enforcement, our emergency services, our fire, they don't always get the recognition so they should. So we developed this team award, Team Excellent in Management, and we gave it to a Millbury firefighter a couple weeks ago. We gave it to Sean Lovely in Worcester. But it's going to recognize someone in the community who steps above and beyond. We've also got some great community partnerships going on. A lot of it deals with the money that we give out through drug forfeiture. But you know, the opioid task force now, we're over 500 strong, and thank you for being a member. And
those meetings are fantastic, getting all of those folks in the same room together to have these conversations that happen so rarely now.
Well, it really is. You step out of your silo and you hear what someone else is doing. Oh, I can use that. I can. And there's no I in team. You know, and if you don't worry about authorship or who gets the credit, we can get so much done. And I think to beat the opioid crisis, I'm really excited about the advances we're doing with the opioid task force. And anyone can join. If anyone's interested, just call our office, ask for Liz Haddad or Jill Woolridge, give me your email, and they'll get you on the task force. And we put out weekly readings, materials, what's latest, whether it be Purdue Pharma and the lawsuit or different things to talk about what's happening on the front. Because you go into a room and you say, raise your hand if you know someone affected by the opioid crisis. 60% of the people raise their hands usually. Raise your hand if you know someone that has died. It's 30 to 40%. We're also doing a lot right now. We just got reaccredited, our Child Advocacy Center, which I'm real proud of. It's the first nationally accredited Child Advocacy Center in Worcester County that deals with the victims of sexual abuse and trauma. We, you know, behind the room, you might have a doctor, a nurse, a police officer, prosecutor, and on the other side you'll have our victim, child victim, and someone asking the questions. So the child only has to tell their story once, so that all that trauma that they have suffered, they don't have to resuffer.
That is fantastic. As you know, I used to be the teen counselor for our local rape crisis center, and the hardest thing was supporting teens going through the legal process. And for a lot of them, a few months in, they were like, okay, I'm done. Like, that's it. Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And that's a normal reaction for a teenager or a kid to say, like, this thing happened to me and I don't want to revisit it again. So the way that we can kind of reduce that trauma and be conscious of that and be trauma informed, I'm so thankful for learning about that.
No, it's what you're supposed to do in this job. And I've got a great team, Courtney Sands, and her attorneys, and Lena Pascio or Tracy DeFusco, the administrators, I mean, they're really doing God's work. They're angels. They really are angels helping these kids through this process, you know, through the trauma. And not every interview we do leads to a prosecution, but the child knows that they're listened to. The parents know that they're listened to. And if there's something we can do to help, we're going to do it. And that right there is a kind of a self-reaffirming, helping them bring back, get some positive energy back to see that there are people who really care about them. And I'm real proud of that Child Advocacy Center. We partner with UMass, and it's great. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you know, being head of a teen rape crisis center, the demands on that, I can't imagine.
I will always say it was the hardest job I've
Yeah.
ever had, because not only was I the counselor for teen survivors of sexual violence, I also went into the middle schools and high schools and taught sexual violence prevention education, a lot of what your team does. So when I always tell this story, I will never forget the 15-year-old who said, "Ma'am, you're ruining my weekend by teaching me about alcohol and consent." And I was like, remember this face. Because I'm protecting you as much as I'm protecting a potential victim. I want you to be educated and informed, because I know when it comes to sexual violence in our community, there is a lot of scenarios, especially within our young people, that we're not teaching them how to be in healthy relationships. We're not teaching them how to start relationships with one another in a respectful way. And even though their intent might not have been to hurt someone, that they do something that irreparably harms them and changes their trajectory. And how we can talk about sexual violence. I went to law school for 3 years to figure out how do we make our laws stronger. And Massachusetts has pretty good laws.
Yeah.
It's really back to the community work, and I'm so glad that you have such integration between that, because we can have really strong laws on the books if our community isn't bought into them and isn't respectful of them and understanding them, then they don't necessarily work.
No, and being in the schools, the kids then leave these meetings and they have a conversation. What do you mean alcohol is going to affect consent? No, you can't consent to sexual activity when you're drunk. It's just, and the violence that goes along with it. And oftentimes when we talk about domestic violence, what a child might see at home and has been traumatized. And trauma is really the hot button issue lately, and we're learning so much about how it affects people to use opioids, how it affects people to do damaging behaviors. So the more we can learn about trauma, the better
You've been
off.
bringing in a lot of speakers, especially to talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and what does that mean for our community. And now that we're finally getting this data to understand how is that impacting and how can we target our resources, especially at an earlier age.
Yeah, the ACEs tool, the different tests that we can give, the different conversations that we can have are all just so crucial to helping us understand things, why a child's acting up in school. He's not a bad kid. He just, we had one girl who got thrown off the bridge, Lake Quinsigamond. It's an amazing story. The case is still active. I can't say too much about it, but she was in school for 8 a.m. After she'd been put in a trunk, thrown over, and left for dead. She went to the hospital, got out, she's in school for 8 a.m. But we're doing more now to let the teachers know, well, you've got someone coming in that was traumatized last night. We got another family, so dad hit mom. These kids are coming in. They might need some special attention today.
Yeah.
And, and these, we don't want to be further victimizing these kids by suspending them from school because they're acting out, but rather having that conversation. What's going on? What happened? And those conversations are going from the police to the schools, and there's a lot of good stuff happening on that.
Yeah. What else is going on at the DA's office? I feel like we've talked about so many different programs.
Okay. At the DA's office, we've put a big emphasis in our juvenile court. And when I get in, the juvenile court operated like any other courts, and what I realized is it needed more attention. So I put our best and brightest prosecutors in the juvenile court. And one thing I've learned about kids is you need justice, but you need swift, compassionate justice, and educating justice, if you will, directly dealing with problems. If someone's starting fires, we have a fire starter program. If someone's shoplifting, we have a program for shoplifting. If someone's doing something behind the wheel of a car, we have a teen ride. When I get in, took 6 months to get a jury trial in the juvenile court. Now you can get a jury trial in a matter of weeks. And these things, partnering with our neighborhood groups, partnering with our cities and towns, this is one of the reasons that juvenile delinquency complaints have gone down 57%. 57% since we got into office, and work with our legislators on money for programs and putting.
I don't think we've talked about this, so I'm going to do a little shout out to First Justice Carol Erskine, who I interned with. I had a co-op with when I was in law school, so I actually did 3 months co-oping in the juvenile court in Worcester, and so thank you for the work and getting to know a lot of your assistant district attorneys that are just doing awesome work of making sure that our kids are getting the resources that they need so that they can really excel and be reintegrated back into the community.
Judge Erskine is fantastic. We're lucky to have her. I'm glad you brought her up. I'm meeting with her today at 2 o'clock.
Oh, tell her I said hi.
I will.
She's great.
Oh, and she keeps us on our toes. When I move someone out of that unit, I make sure that she's getting someone who's just as good, the lawyer is just as good, and maybe not as experienced, but has the potential to really grow and develop in the juvenile court. Because as you know, whether it be the C&Ps, the chins that they used to do, there's so many issues. There's so many issues, especially mental health issues. A lot of kids are on medication. But by dealing with particular problems, what I know we can do is make the kids, get them focused, get them back online, and do better.
Yeah, District Attorney, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and share some of the work that you're doing. We're going to share your contact information when we post this up online so folks can reach out to you, especially around the opioid task force or the community involvement.
Please, we'd love to be in every school we can get to.
Right.
I mean, these programs, I'm so proud of the people that do them. I'm so proud of the people that really care about the community and get it out there every day. I mean, we also do the elderly scams, and if you get a call, especially this time of year, someone's putting pressure on you, call the DA's office, and we will make that call. We will tell you. These scams are getting clever and clever, but don't give out your Social Security information. Don't give out any information about you, your last 4 numbers. Don't give out anything. This is a particularly bad time for scams as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that last tip of advice. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Wow, that went